After years of struggling to grow my arms, this has been the movement that's finally allowed me to add size into one of my weakest body parts. I'm going to walk you through exactly how to blow up your triceps. So firstly, before we get started, let's talk about what a JM press actually is, a little bit about the history. So for any of you that don't know, the JM press was created by a powerlifter in the 1990s called J.M. Blakely, hence the name JM press. He was someone that's benched over 700 pounds, which in the UK money is 318 kilos. What he did is he took the typical close grip bench press and a skull crusher, or what other people might know as a lying tricep extension, and combined the two to create this horrendously lovely tricep exercise. So what is it? Instead of coming back behind your head with the skull crusher and extending like that, we're actually going to bring the bar to somewhere about our chin. Now what this does is why it's better, in my opinion, than a close grip bench press is as a close grip bench press comes down, you're pressing through, and yes, there's a lot of tricep activation, but you're never really stretching the tricep out. And you'll see just in a moment why this is such difficult but effective movement. How do we set up a JM press, and why would we program it in our training? So firstly, you need a Smith machine. Any Smith machine will do, and you need a flat bench. As you can see here, I've got only 20 kilos aside, so one plate, and this is quite a heavy movement. So this is actually a really good load for me to have on this machine. Now, if we scroll through ever so slightly, you can see that I'm actually facing the opposite way typically from this. And the reason for that is as it unhooks, I want the bar to be in the meat of my palm, and I don't want it to roll into the back of my hands. Now, the reason for this is, as we discussed in a prior video, this part of your hand is stacked under the wrist and under the elbow. So we're going to take away the possibility of, or at least reduce the likelihood of, elbow discomfort, which is quite a common factor in this. So as we're setting up here, I've set up the bar so it's coming, and if you've got a beard, this will be quite useful for you. It's coming to my beard. Now, anywhere between your clavicle or your collarbone and your forehead, probably more likely your nose, is going to be about the range, and it's going to depend on your limb length. So just play around with that and see where you go with that. So I'm going to take a narrow grip. You can see that my arms, what I'm doing is I'm pressing my arms and making sure that my arms are directly over my shoulders. Reason for this is I want to make sure that my shoulders are as stable as possible, because as soon as we start moving the shoulders around, the pec is then going to start assisting the work, and we don't want that. We want to keep those shoulders back and down with the elbows coming up. So as we watch through here, you can see that I'm actually gripping slightly inside of the knurling. The knurling is the grippy bit on the bar. And I'm going to take a thumbless grip. Now, the reason for this is I want the elbows to be tucked in as tight as possible. Now, as soon as you do that, you can see that my forearm turns on. Whereas if I do that, I can then tuck it a little bit further. So that's some key aspects when setting up in the first place. I want to interrupt this video just to talk to you about supplements. As a competitive bodybuilder, my performance, my recovery, and my health are all super important in my life. This is why I have been using Trained by JP supplements for the last 5 years now. They cover everything from your pre, intra, and post-workout nutrition. They also offer health and joint supplementation. They also offer a nice stack and save option, which means that you don't have to think about which individual products you need. They're all there in a bundle package for you with a discount. If you click the link in the description below and use the code GPS10 at checkout, you'll get a 10% off your order. Now back to the video. On to the second aspect of the setup. As we go through the movement, we can see here that I'm making sure that the inside of my palm is jammed in to the bar as hard as possible. Now I'm unracking, so you can see there that I'm loading that point directly here over the large part, the large bone. I can't remember the name. The ulnar is on the outside, but the inside bone is now being loaded. And what I'm thinking about as soon as I break is I'm breaking my elbows towards this wall. Imagine you can see through here all of these machines. I'm thinking pressing my elbows together and away. So instead of coming back, I'm thinking that that is breaking here. Now, the bigger you are, the harder it's going to be to keep those elbows tucked. But the more that we can keep those elbows tucked and almost resting the triceps onto the lat here, you can see that I'm not perfectly keeping my elbows tight, but I'm doing the best that I can. And as I press up, I'm thinking of driving my elbows together. Now, what does this do? Why do we do this? Because as soon as we flare the elbows, the pec is going to help and the shoulders are also going to help, which actually makes this movement a little bit safer than you would expect, because it looks, from the outside, it looks quite dangerous. Now, because we are loading the hell out of the tricep and keeping the tension here, when it fatigues, all we've got to do is flare our elbows and our shoulders and pecs will take over. So when we start to fail, you'll notice at the end of this set that I'm able to just rack it quite easily, because for me, a plate aside on a bench press or an incline press or a shoulder press is a warm-up. So everything else is strong enough to do this, but I'm loading the tricep as much as possible. Now you can see here the amount of tension that's coming through that tricep. What I'm also going to touch on as well is how high the elbows are. What I'm aiming to do is almost keep them tucked and push elbows up rather than just concertina them back. Now the reason for this is, think of the skull crusher. What happens with it? We come back and the hand goes below the elbow. Now the lower that we can get the hand below the elbow, the more stretch we're going to get on the tricep. This isn't a movement that you're going to get an insane squeeze like a tricep extension where you'd get that full lockout, and that's where it would be necessarily the hardest. This is hardest in this position right here. You can see the wrists are slightly back on themselves. This is optional. It can, for me, my forearms actually end up touching my biceps a little bit shorter if I retract my wrist that way, because you can see here that the forearm actually turns on and then it then rests on the bicep a little bit sooner. So by having my wrist cocked like that, this is off, this is on, and it gives me a little bit more leeway to come into it. So that's just something on the hand position. We touched briefly earlier on the range of motion for this movement and kind of where's the most effective. Now, I'm big on full range of motion. However, there is very, very little value in locking out the elbows in this. As I said earlier, we're not looking to get that insane squeeze. This is a position where we're looking to overload the stretch portion of the tricep. So the quicker we can get our body back into this stretch portion here, the lower we can get it in there. And actually, when we lock out, all that we're doing is taking tension off of the movement, because we've stacked the joints as part of the setup where the hands and wrists are over the shoulders. So think of it like a squat. If we're thinking about it, because it's a very similar idea to a squat. When we're doing a hack squat or something, we're moving the hips towards the heels and almost moving the knees out the way. Now it's the same principle here. We're moving the hands to the shoulders or the throat or the neck or whatever you want to talk about it, and we're moving the elbows out the way and up. Similarly with the squat, we're moving the knees out the way and moving it so that the glutes can touch the hamstrings, or the hips can come down to the heels, and moving the knees up to create the most stretch. So think of it in that way. And I'm almost, when I do have clients that maybe struggle with this movement, I tell them to think about going 2/3 or 3/4 of the way up, so that you're keeping that constant tricep involvement. Now I can safely say that I can come all the way up and keep that tension on the tricep, but this is through having patterned this movement for years and years and progressed it, and even after this time I'm still getting better at it. So the longer you do it, the longer you'll be able to the more you'll be able to get out of this movement. So that's just a little bit on kind of the range of motion and where the money is in the movement so that we can maximize the most out of this movement. Finally then, let's talk about where this would play best in your split. Now, this will depend on a couple of factors. Are arms a lagging body part? Have you got a dedicated arm day? Is this a push-pull leg split, an upper-lower split, something like that? So because of the movement is quite sheer on the elbows, I would not put this as something that you'd put first in your plan. Yes, it's a meat and potatoes movement that you'd want to be as strong as you can at, but the torque that is going through the elbow joint, you want them to be warm first. So this is on my arm day, and I like to have, so before this I'll do a single arm tricep extension so the elbow is nice and warm, and then I'll also do a single arm preacher curl again to get that elbow warm, check for any aches and pains and anything like that. Is it slightly fatiguing on the tricep? Yes, but that's fine. You know, this isn't a movement that you're looking to add 3-4 plates aside on in the long run. It's a movement that you're going to be overloading in a lower rep range, so maybe like the 6 to 8 to 10s. But at the same time, the loads aren't going to be dramatic. Now, if, say, you've got a push-pull leg split without a dedicated arm day, this would be something along the lines of, it would go along with your push work. I think that much is obvious. But you'd have it after you're pressing. So maybe you might do, let's say for a push day, you might typically start off with a lateral raise, then an incline press, then a flat press. And if we're looking to get more tricep than we are, say, chest, then instead of doing some form of dip, this would be something that you could throw in there. Or if you've got an A and a B rotation, then you could do a dip one time and then a JM press another time. So that's where I'd typically put that. And again, keep it in that lower rep range, because yes, high reps do feel good on this, but think about the amount of time that elbow is spending in that really extended position. So as I say, anywhere from 6 to 10 reps, maybe going up to the 12s. I wouldn't be going somewhere in the 15s plus with this. You could maybe put it at the end of your workout, but it's quite a fatiguing movement. I'm not a big fan of that word, but it does take quite a lot out of you. This is the most exciting movement of my arm day. The rest of it is kind of elbow bendy. This is the only one where I can put some load on there. And as I mentioned before, it's one of those ones that is heavier than it looks. So, you know, starting with 5 kilos aside, 10 kilos aside, or, you know, get into a point where your execution is great, because as I said earlier as well, lots of other muscles can take over quite quickly. And I've been there. I've had a plate and a half, close to 2 plates aside, but there was a lot of pec involvement and stabilizing, and there's a little bit of my ego was getting involved. So now that I've stripped it back, got to that one plate, gone back to a plate, and really focusing on keeping those elbows in, I'm noticing such a higher level of growth. So if we look at it from the side, then where are my elbows tracking? As I'm in a JM press, my shoulders are back, I'm here, and then tucking in, really forcing that elbow in and extending through, thinking about keeping that pressure on that mid hand, on the inner part of your hand as we're going through, and coming back down, breaking at the elbow and bringing it nice and back. So as I say, the narrower you are, the more you'll be able to get your elbows together. As you get bigger, as you get wider, as your triceps get bigger, they will start to flare a little bit more, purely because of the amount of meat on your bones. But that's not something to worry about. Do the best you can. Keep your elbows safe. Take a pause in the stretch. Don't necessarily lock it out to keep that elbow health there. and you'll be like me, where you're over 30, been training over 10 years, and still don't need elbow sleeves. So thank you very much for watching. I hope this was useful. I hope you enjoyed the video. Comment any other exercises that you'd like to see. I've got a string of these lined up, but it's what order to put them in, and I've got lots of knowledge on all sorts of different movements that I've programmed over the many years and coaching many different people. So thank you again, and I'll see you next week.